in our different role capacity. Councilmember Park, I see you are on. Can I just check your audio real quick?
this joint meeting of Valley Water with the amazing Santa Clara City Council is called to order. Madam Clerk, we would be honored if you would call the roll.
Director Estamera. Director Estamera, can you turn your mic on and so that way I make sure everybody can hear you. Director Shua.
Here.
Director Keegan.
Here.
Director Lazat. I do not have Director Lazat present yet. Director Santos.
Yes.
Vice Chair Varela.
Yes, I'm here.
Chair Crimmon.
I am here.
If we could have our Assistant City Clerk take our roll call, please.
Councilmember Watanabe,
Here.
Councilmember Shahal,
Present.
Councilmember Hardy,
Present.
Councilmember Park,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jane,
Here.
Councilmember Becker,
Present.
Mayor Gilmore.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move on to the Pledge of Allegiance and National Anthem, and we are honored to have one of our clerks, Glenna, who is actually going to sing the National Anthem. So I guess we all rise. Put our hands on our.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
That was beautiful.
Very beautiful, Glenna, always in a treat. All right, now we're moving on to agenda item 1.3. This is the time for public comments for things that are relevant to these bodies, and, but not on the agenda tonight. So if it's on the agenda, while you can speak here, it's going to be better if you speak after the agenda items. So I guess what we should probably do is I'll ask Ms. King, and then Mayor Gilmore can ask your city clerk for comments that for things that are relevant to one of these two bodies, but not on the agenda tonight. So do we have anything, Ms. King?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have 4 members of the public that currently have their hand raised. I'll start with the first one, Miss Melanie Harris.
Hi there, figuring out the unmute there. I have lived in Santa Clara for 12 years. All my kids have been born while living here, and we have all actively participated at the BMX track. Currently, the track has been closed, and it is my understanding that this is due to some financial concerns, and we are looking to understand what we can do to get the track back open because the kids are missing out. I think if the financial concerns are between USA BMX and the Santa Clara Pell Board, that it is common in a nonprofit universe to have financial audits accompany the 990 filing, as well as what is the quickest way to resolve this so that the kids can get back on the track, because they are seriously missing it at this point. Thank you.
Okay, the next constituent I have that the hand raised is Miss Tammy McDonald.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Tammy McDonald, and my family has been a part of the Santa Clara PAL BMX community for the past 2 years. When shelter in place happened, my family struggled with finding ways to engage our children, maintaining their mental health, teaching them self-worth, reducing their stress, and all while teaching them to problem solve. Initially, my 2 younger boys began attending the well-organized skills practice and eventually began racing. Just a few short weeks later, our eldest son and my husband tried out the sport too. Surprisingly, our family began spending more time together and racing. In the past few months, I too have joined the racing community, and we are now a family of 5 that spends 2 to 3 days enjoying all this program has to offer under its current leadership. The track runs efficiently in a friendly manner, and the program continues to grow rapidly. If you've ever had the pleasure of traveling to other Bay Area tracks, you'll learn to appreciate just how effectively and efficiently our track runs. Motos are posted, checked, rechecked, and riders are always aware of their lanes. To say the process is smooth would be an understatement. In the past month, my entire family participated in the largest state qualifier race, the largest state race in the United States. It was executed under our current leadership with precision. Current leadership has spent countless hours not only running races, but also building the track community, outreach, teaching new riders the ropes, and welcoming in new families. The program has grown exponentially thanks to their dedication, love of the sport, and family connections. Please do not change the way this program is run and the current leadership that makes it just so successful. Thank you for your time.
The next constituent is Cass Karan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, Mayor Gilmore and council members. I'm speaking tonight to show my support for the current team operating the PAL BMX track and also to raise some of my concerns regarding recent actions by the PAL board. I started racing at PAL sometime around 1999 while attending Cal. My children and I now race at PAL together. The track, the staff, and the BMX community mean more to us than I can describe in words. The PAL track has been closed for several weeks now due to struggles between the PAL board and the volunteer staff. Some gregarious accusations have been made by the PAL board to the track's volunteer staff, and aggressive maneuvers have been taken by the PAL board, including ransacking one of the volunteers' offices in front of her child. The PAL board's mission statement includes teaching youth how to respect one another and to promote the spirit of benevolence, neither of which appears to be happening at present. The city is in jeopardy of losing not only the incredible team that has been operating the track, has completely turned around the program, created a world-class facility, and brought in more funding for PAL organization than ever before, but also in jeopardy of losing the upcoming national, an event that brings in nearly $3 million to the local economy. What appears to be at heart of this matter is money and management. The PAL board has been approached by USA BMX, the sanctioning body, with a proposal to take over the day-to-day management of the track, including finances, maintenance, and oversight of the local track operators as a compromise to both sides. PAL would receive a generous monthly donation to continue funding their programming as before. This plan also includes a built-in savings plan to help build funds for the new track when the inevitable happens and our track must be moved. At present, PAL has not planned financially for the future move. This solution is a fair compromise by all parties involved, creating transparency, continuity, and structure. The president of the PAL board turned down this option before even considering the presentation that USA BMX was presenting. The PAL BMX track is currently one of the top 2 tracks in the nation and earned that position due to the dedicated volunteer staff. Please urge the PAL board to do what is in the best interest of our thriving program so we can all get back to the sport we love and building the community. Also, on a side note, since this is a water board meeting, I'd like to mention that since PAL switched over to the slurry, we've saved 100,000 gallons of water per year. Thank you.
All right, next constituent is Mr. Jason Perkins.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. All right, I too am here tonight to bring to your attention the unfortunate situation that you've been hearing with the Santa Clara PAL BMX program. I'm the father of 2 boys that started in this program about 1.5 years ago. Since starting, we have literally spent every night racing that the PAL BMX track is open, which is 3 nights per week, plus a clinic that they run on Thursday nights. While I don't fully understand the reasons behind the decisions to close the track, the rumor mill is that it has to do with contention between the board and the current set of volunteers operating the track on the topic of money management. USA BMX, as you heard, has made an attempt to assist in coming to a resolution to no avail. It seems like a non-biased mediation is required between the 2 sides to bring them together to a successful conclusion for this, and to do it in an expedited fashion. I do want to voice my strong support tonight for the current track operation team as what they do for the BMX community and the hundreds of kids involved. It's beyond outstanding. If you've had a chance to go to the track to see how this track operates, it is flawless. I've been to 16 other tracks in this state, and not a single one of them runs as efficiently as this. The people that I speak with at the other tracks tell me time and time again how lucky we are to have such an awesome track operation team at our facility. The track, and more importantly, the current way it's been run, is the pinnacle of what every BMX track operator thrives to achieve. The proof point, as you heard by one of the other folks that have spoke, was the state race held back on February 6th. It was the largest state event in both rider and moto count in BMX USA history, and it was run superbly by this dedicated set of volunteers. With the currently scheduled joint USA BMX Nationals and Worlds qualifier upcoming in March, I understand there's a real possibility that this event will be moved from this facility. And if it comes to this, it is going to be detrimental to the Santa Clara, to the city of Santa Clara, as the loss of revenue for hotels, restaurants, and other businesses will get impacted by this. So I just want to pause for a second and let that sink in. I'm pleading for your help here, the city council here, to assist in any way possible to bring this to a successful conclusion.
Sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Perkins, I apologize.
Sorry, I was just concluding that it's unfortunate to what is currently happening to the current program under the current set of volunteers that are running the track. And so thank you for your time for allowing me to speak tonight.
The next constituent I have with their hand raised is Mr. Brian Jenkins. Mike, I'm not able to promote him. I mean, not able to give him permissions to speak. It wants me to promote him. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening to the members of the City Council of Santa Clara. I'm also here to address the issues at Santa Clara PAL. My name is Brian Jenkins. I reside in San Mateo and have a 9-year-old son who participates in the activities that have been halted at the #1 outdoor BMX track in America, Santa Clara PAL. It has gained that title due to the hard work and dedication of the volunteer track operators. And I stress, volunteers. Nick, Joey, Jeff, and Marissa, along with several other hardworking parents that dedicate endless hours for no other reward than a safe, fun place for kids and their families to pursue their greatness in the sport of BMX. We have only been involved for the last 2 seasons and have been welcomed into this community with open arms and now spend 2 to 3 nights a week riding there. The staff does an excellent job in running a smooth, all-inclusive program. They managed to keep the track open during COVID and abide by all the rules when no other sport or program could do that. That says a lot. I know the police athletic board had options to keep this track open with the current staff and has chosen to go another route, which leads me to believe they are motivated more by profit than by helping the community. I implore you to help Nick and USA BMX find a resolution to this issue so they can keep this top-notch track running as smoothly as it has been and get the kids back doing what they love, racing. The Police Athletic Board claims to be a nonprofit organization that puts kids in a positive setting, but it seems to me all they're doing now is keeping kids home and bullying volunteers and trying to make money. Maybe we should be looking into their practices. Thank you for your time.
All right,
I have one last constituent, Mr. Chair.
go for it.
Kante.
Hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Shay Canty. My family was introduced to the sport of BMX about 5 years ago. I had a daughter who couldn't find her place in the world, couldn't find a sport she wanted to participate in, and someone had suggested we try this, ragtag little track up at the top of the old dump site, and we brought her up there, and a love of the sport immediately happened. Our first day up there, Nick, who is one of the operators of the track, I have a picture of her riding the track for the first time and him up there helping her, and it's something we look back on often because we think of everything that has happened since then. After that first trip around the track, our entire family has started racing, including myself, someone who barely knew how to ride a bicycle. And now all 3 of my kids and myself are regulars at the track. We've seen the organization go from a pretty rundown looking dirt track, not a lot of facilities, not very many riders. To see it grow to where it's at right now has been remarkable, and it is 100% thanks in part to the volunteers and the board that runs the track. The dedication that they've shown to not only improving the facilities, but trying to grow the sport, involve more kids, create a safe and inclusive environment, to diversify the types of people that are riding BMX is nothing short of a miracle. And maybe it's not always done in the most eloquent way that is the way that the PAL board has always seen things be done, but you can't argue that it's been successful. I'm here today to speak on behalf and to talk about how well the track is run, how much impact they have in the community, and what a blessing it has been to so many families to have such dedicated volunteers running the track. I don't know them outside of BMX, but I've seen nothing but integrity, organization, and a commitment to making this the best track in the country. I'm sad about this whole situation. I also don't know a lot of the details of the allegations that are there. From what I can tell, I'm hoping that the board can help us with some transparency. I'd like to see what the accusations are, to see if there's any merit to them, and hopefully a resolution on the whole matter so that we can get the track open and have our kids riding again. They miss it desperately. So that's what I have.
Okay, I have a few more constituents with their hands raised. I have Miss Teresa Esquivel.
Can you?
Go ahead, Miss Escobar.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right, good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak this evening. I just wanted to share a few thoughts. So I am a female BMXer that does ride at Santa Clara PAL. I know you've heard from quite a few of these folks that have shared their thoughts. I am actually 30 years old. I've ridden at Santa Clara since I was about 11 years old. So you can see that's about 19 years going on 20. This was a family sport that my entire family had started together. It was something that kept us together. I can remember only the amount of years that I raced, and although I did miss out a lot of time with friends from school, it was something that has definitely kept me out of trouble. And it has also taught me leadership. It has taught me, how to really apply myself to something and to stay dedicated and motivated. When I started BMX, I was probably one of 4 girls at the track. And now we have an entire community of ladies, not only with Santa Clara PAL BMX, but also with USA BMX. We have an entire support system with the ladies in the community. You can only imagine on a weekly basis, we're there 3 times a week. So not only myself, 20 years, almost 20 years, 3 days a week, you can imagine how much time I've spent there. So this is not only just a place to ride or to hang out on the evenings or during the weekend, but it's family, and it's become pretty much home to me. The track with the operators, I grew up with Nick. I've had conversations with him, and just remembering when we were younger and saying how many opportunities that this track had to develop, and it definitely has improved. I'm not going to say it was a dump, but it went from literally a dump to one of the best tracks in the US that anybody could ever imagine. And for this to be taken away, I grew up in the Silicon Valley in Santa Clara County my entire life, and I've literally seen the roller rinks. I've seen ice skating rinks. I've seen all types of after school outdoor activities, things like that being taken away before our eyes. And to think that it's a possibility that this track would be taken away from us would be just one more thing that's just devastating to our community. Not only has Nick put in the effort, and along with Marissa and Joey that other folks have mentioned, along with all the other volunteers, they've put in their work, they've put in effort. I myself has put in effort into the track, trying to make sure that it's maintained to the best that anybody could. And the efficiency, I think somebody mentioned earlier, went from, a dirt track that we needed lots of water. We needed time, people sweeping the tracks before people would come out to the races, and to now have not to do that, to now have a slurry track, to have a very nice track that everybody sees as one of the best tracks, well maintained, the efficiency of being able to, sign up for registrations online, to have motos being posted online, saving paper, saving resources and things like that. It's an unbelievable.
Our next speaker has the label of Zoom user. Go ahead. You're still muted. Constituent by the name of Zoom user, you're still muted. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm not able to get the user to unmute. Somebody else just raised their hand, so we'll move on to the next one. Mr. Tori Newman.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, barely, but we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add, I share the same sentiments as everybody else, all the other constituents that have shared, that the existing track operators handle everything in a professional manner. And you know, I mean, I'll even say I don't always agree with everything everybody does out there, but you know what? Ultimately, that program runs very well, better than I've ever seen before, and I'm proud to be part of that track. But the one thing I wanted to add is that, you know, if the PAL board proceeds with what we're understanding that they plan to do, which is change leadership, there's a good chance that we'll lose this national, and that's also a world qualifier, and that could be, you know, for some people their only opportunity to ever qualify for to compete at a world level. I think it would be a careless thing to do, to replace the current leadership. At least, you know, if there's, well, anyways, yeah, that's my piece. I just think that it's a pretty poor decision to make for a track that runs as well as this track runs, and the way that the leadership handles everything there, and treats all of the membership. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I have no other speakers. I can't get the Zoom user to have access to audio, but Ms. Pimentel has an e-comment that she needs to read into the record.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our e-comment is from Kevin Ruffin, and it states the following. Santa Clara County mask mandate. This mandate should be removed and masks should be optional. We wore masks through Delta surge and Omicron surge, and it didn't do a thing. The shots we have gotten while keeping you out of ICU are not vaccines. They don't prevent spread of build immunity. Even knowing that, it is very clear from 2 years of mask wearing and pushing people to get shots, it's time to end the mask mandates like everyone else is doing. Why does Santa Clara County have to be subject to this? End of comment. And that's all I have. Thank you.
That is it for public comment, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, both clerks, and thank you, members of the public, for weighing in. And there will also be additional time for public comment during items if the public comments are directly relevant to the item. So in any case, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Gary Kremen. I'm the chair of the Valley Water, also known as the Santa Clara Valley Water District Board of Directors. On behalf of our board, I want to welcome our colleagues from the Santa Clara City Council and their staff. Thanks for joining us tonight. I know you have a lot on your plates, a lot going on, a lot of issues, but you know, we have a long history of working together to discuss and solve topics of mutual interest between our organizations and talk about how we can partner on the important issues that benefit our shared communities. Even though the pandemic is totally given us a lot of challenges in the last 2 years, I'm pleased that we're both committed to continuing this tradition so we can serve our mutual constituents. So as I probably bet you know that it's been tough to operate during the pandemic. I'm sure all of you deeply understand this. We've been able during the pandemic to move forward on some of the projects that we've been working on and take action in this ongoing and unfortunately worsening drought. And I'm going to use the word emergency because it is an emergency. And I know we're probably over crisis with the pandemic, the unhoused, the economic situation, BMX, whatever. But, you know, our priorities here remain focused on providing safe, clean, and reliable water supply and advancing and building flood protection projects and environmental stewardship activities. So our number one thing we're really focused now is how we keep water coming through the taps in the wells during this drought emergency. We'd like to thank your council plus the residents for water conservation actions that they've put in place, because we have to encourage that because it's the least expensive thing that we can do. And we got to keep water use down because the more we conserve, the less emergency water that we have to purchase, which by the way, is 4 times the price it was 2 years ago. People talk about inflation, but that's 4x in 2 years. So the more we conserve, the less we have to buy. And by the way, we're having actual trouble buying emergency water. So conservation is super important, as is your support for drought resilience technologies such as the recycled water that we've been doing right now, and some of the projects in the future, because it's going to prepare our mutual constituents for more and severe weather that is undoubtedly going to happen because of climate change. And we can't really achieve this on our own. We need to work closely with you. So I want to thank the council, the mayor, the vice mayor, especially the staff for the time to meet. I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Gilmore for any introductory remarks you wish to make, and then we'll do mutual introductions if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Chair Kremen. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for organizing this meeting, inviting us. And I really missed the time that we were able to meet at the Water District offices. I was reminded that the last time we were there was 2018. I think former Chair Santos was the chair at the time. And I find this to be so even more important now. To hear what you have to say. So I'm going to keep my remarks short, but I know we did a roll call, but I'd like to introduce my fellow council members. I have Vice Mayor Suds Jane that's here this evening, Council Member Kathy Watanabe, Council Member Karen Hardy, Council Member Raj Chahal, Council Member Kevin Park, and Councilmember Anthony Becker. So we have a full house here today. We all are anxious to hear what you have to say. I think in Santa Clara, we are really, really proud of our residents for their conservation efforts and what they've done. I think that we are all taking water conservation seriously, especially here in Santa Clara. And we have our residences and our businesses and our staff educating us, and you helping us with that to do the very best we can. And we're going to have to even do more. We got a little excited with the recent rains, and then they left. And so I think that because of the interest in this, because this is our future, we can't live without water. This is probably one of the most often asked questions that we get here in the city whenever we're considering any type of development or expansions or anything, is do we have enough water, and are we being responsible as stewards of this city in terms of looking forward to the future. So I'm really excited to hear about what you're going to tell us today. I know it's probably not good news, but I think we need to all be educated on what the current situation is today and what we all need to do to pitch in as a community to conserve for the future. So I want to keep my comments short because I want to get to the program. So again, thank you, Chair Kremen, for organizing this, and your entire board and your staff for arranging this today. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you pointed out that just because it rains a couple times, it's like eating healthy once or twice. It doesn't put you in shape, or maybe going to the gym once or twice. That does not, build all the muscles you want. So let me introduce our board real quick. Vice Chair John Barella, Director Barbara Keegan, Director Dick or Richard Santos, Director Linda Lazat, Director Nai Shwea, and Director Tony Estromera. So that's we also have a full house. And I'm going to now introduce our CEO, Rick Callender, who's going to take care of the next agenda item.
All right, thank you, Chair Kremen. And first, good evening, Chair Kremen and members of the board. And good evening, Mayor Gilmore and members of the council. We're going to hop right into our first item. And as you know, we are truly in unprecedented times with the drought that we're in. We've left one of the driest Januaries on record, and now it appears that there's no precipitation in the forecast through the remainder of February, and there's very little precipitation in the long range forecast for March. And at this point, we're again looking at we're in pretty dire conditions, both statewide as well as locally, for the drought. And the one thing I always point out is that we're always in this together. Each and every one of us is going to have to always do our part relative to conservation, and we look forward to continuing to partner with the city of Santa Clara to help our mutual residents and businesses conserve and be part of the solution. At that, I'm going to turn this directly over to Aaron Baker, our Chief Operating Officer of the Water Utility Enterprise, and he's going to put on an agenda. He's going to present on item agenda 2.1, receive information on drought and water supply conditions, future planning update, and a call for conservation. Chief Operating Officer Baker, it's all yours.
Thank you, CEO Calendar, and thank you, Chair, Mayor, and Honorable Board and Council persons. Good evening. I'm Aaron Baker, Chief Operating Officer of the Water Utility, and I'm here to provide you a drought update. Next slide, please. As the Chair mentioned, we are still in a drought emergency, and even though we received a little bit of rain in October and December, and our current status is raised to severe, we still are in an emergency. This January was the driest January on record for San Jose, and it's one of the driest for Northern California. Not only that, February has been a dry month so far. The county relies on water imported from outside the county for over half our water supply. Shasta Reservoir, a key reservoir for the Central Valley Project for which we receive water, is only 37% full. It's about half of its historical average. A miracle March is not going to make up for the last 2 dry years. Locally, our reservoir storage remains well below average, especially as our Anderson Reservoir was ordered to be drained for seismic retrofitting. Next slide, please. Valley Water declared a drought emergency, and we made a call to reduce water use by 15% in June last year. Cumulative water savings since our call was made in June through December 2021 is 8%. We set the bar high using the 2019 base year. This is necessitated by the drought emergency that we are currently in. It is imperative that we continue to use all the tools in the toolbox to achieve this 15% call for conservation. Next slide, please. Thank you to Santa Clara and the great residents of the city of Santa Clara for declaring a drought emergency in July last year and for implementing the water shortage contingency plan and the water use restrictions. Santa Clara's efforts have been effective and cumulative water savings was 8%, but there is more needed to reach our goal. Next slide, please. We have an extensive public outreach campaign to create drought awareness and promote conservation on TV, radio, social media, including ads in movie theaters. And you may have actually seen the chair on TV. He's on most of the local newscasts spouting our messages about conservation. Next slide, please. We are also promoting our purified water program and have just completed an inspiring ad which can be found on our website. Next slide. We've had tremendously high participation in our conservation program since last year. It shows that the public's response to the drought. We've doubled our rate for our rebates to promote high efficiency landscapes. Next slide, please. Despite exceptionally low imported water allocations we received last year, we were able to bring in additional imported water through these emergency water transfers, as well as retrieving water from our banked water supplies, which we draw. This year, we're expecting extremely low allocations, and the initial amounts we've received are very low. We continue to pursue emergency transfers and banked water. These emergency imported water supplies come from hundreds of miles away. There are several significant risks to being able to import this water. That is why conservation is key. Next slide. According to Santa Clara's Urban Water Management Plan, a majority of Santa Clara's drinking water comes from the groundwater. It's also your backup for any shortages from us or from SFPUC. This graph shows the change in groundwater from our North County groundwater basin. You can see the dip in the groundwater during the last drought. You can also see that the groundwater has been declining over these past 2 years, though the groundwater has not dipped quite as low as the last drought. Fortunately, we've been able to slow down this decline of the groundwater due to the effects of conserving water, and the emergency transfers have also helped. With this drought continues, as the drought is continuing, we are still at risk for subsidence and dry wells, especially here in the city of Santa Clara, so we must continue to conserve. Next slide, please. We are preparing that this drought will continue or possibly get worse. We are securing emergency supplemental transfer water supplies. We may also need to increase our call for conservation. We can continue to track our water supply and possible risks and make decisions necessary to ensure a safe, clean water supply. The drought is still here and we are still in a drought emergency. And we thank the city of Santa Clara for all their efforts to meet our call for conservation and look forward to continuing our collaboration with you and your staff. Next slide. Thank you, and I now stand open for any questions.
All right, do we have any, I'm gonna open this item to public comment. Do we have any public comments on Mr. Baker's sobering presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no hands raised in Zoom. I will ask if Ms. Pimentel has any written e-comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I do not.
All right, well, I'm gonna then open this up to members of the City of Santa Clara's City Council and any of our board members. How about that?
So I see Councilmember Hardy has her hand up.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, Chair Kremen. Usually it's Gary. So my concern is, at this point, we are on voluntary restriction. But my understanding is as soon as April, that could become mandatory restriction. If you could comment on that and what would be required at that point. Thank you.
Sure, maybe Aaron, you could take over and explain what's voluntary, what's mandatory, and how some of the retailers get involved.
Right, so the district has actually called, itself called for mandatory water use reductions necessary to reach the call for 15%. And then the city council also implements stages of their water shortage contingency plan to help us meet that goal. What we're looking at right now is if conditions continue, we may need to increase our call for conservation, which would mean we would like to put in additional mandatory conservation measures. Now, the district is just as a body doesn't necessarily have the powers. We work with the cities to implement this according stage of their water shortage contingency plan to implement those mandatory measures. Kirsten, was there anything you'd like to add on that?
Maybe just to add that since you also received some of your supplies from the San Francisco Public Utility Commission, they did not call for mandatory until recently. So
Councilperson Hardy, does that answer the question? It's actually mandatory, but we leave it up to the retailers to decide how they want to implement it, because certain cities like to implement it one way. You know, some might want to favor business, some might want to favor agriculture, some might want to do other things. So it is mandatory, but it's up to the retailers what they want to do, how to implement the mandatory.
I think that needs to be part of the message. I think a lot of people are not seeing it that way. That was my concern.
Point well taken. You're one of the smartest people I know, and you didn't get it. So we're clearly not making this right. Do we have any other council questions or board?
I don't see any hands. I don't see any council hands, Chair Kremen. So.
All right. So if we don't have anything else on this, since no one else wants to make any comments, I think we all know that this drought is real, and we want to thank you for the actions you've taken. You've been one of the better conservers in the county, and it's the best thing we can do for our water supply. It's the greenest, it's the most environmentally friendly, as opposed to import new water. And the city has actually cumulatively saved 8% versus 6% for the rest of the state. So you're much better than the rest of the state. So no motions required. Now we're going to move on to
the chair. I have a couple.
Yeah.
This is
Go on. Yeah.
So one thing I think we need to share is our conservation rebate program that is so popular today, and allowing the residents and businesses to apply for conservation levels to change their landscaping to meet goals that would minimize the amount of water, changing your irrigation. As an example, using water resistant plants and all those season resistance plants, such as what I just did in my home, which was really kind of cool. all the succulents that we have now, which are seasonal, can survive. So it's a wonderful program. We have a tremendous amount of resources available for this. And for those in the community that are watching this, just contact Valley Water on the rebate program and learn about how you can conserve water and update your landscaping to minimize the amount of water you'll be using in your home and or your business. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair Kremen.
Yes, Director Santos.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Director Varela brings up a good point. We're having I think it's our 4th summit, landscaping summit on Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning. That leads me to share this. Most all the cities have removal of lawns and so on for residential, but they don't include commercial. So just got through talking to the city of Milpitas to join us in on that. Years ago, Mayor of Santa Clara joined us with that $2 for rebates. So I encourage Mayor Gilmore to include commercial lawns be removed and give the $2 rebate. And so if we can do that, that's a lot of savings. And so thank you. Good points.
Isn't it true that there might be rebates up to $100,000 for businesses who remove their
Yes.
lawns?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
$100,000 for businesses in Santa Clara. So if you got a data center, do you really need a lawn? Just rip it out and get a check. Unless
Well,
you're
there's 22 rebate programs, and we come out and do house inspections and all those good things. So we also make the process real simple, so it's not hard, and that's why we make it simple so people will sign up. So I encourage you to call anytime, 408-265-2600. Our landscaping people are there available to help you all. So please join. Thank you.
So Watanabe has her hand up. Kathy Watanabe.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chair Kremen. It's nice to see you and all the other directors as well. And thank you for bringing that suggestion forward. I guess it's another word for xeriscaping, when you take out the lawns and replace them with like drought tolerant plants. I think that's a very good point to make about businesses, being able to have a program that they can, save water. And, but I will say that, when new businesses do come before us, a lot of times they will say that they have already implemented using drought tolerant landscaping in an effort to, again, work with the city to conserve water. So, but whatever we can get, this kind of information is important to be able to share. So thank you, and I'll be sharing it for sure.
Thank you. Do we have any other council comments or board member comments? All right, I don't see that other than someone drinking from bottled water. Oh no, you're penalized already. Uh-oh.
My water bottle broke as I was walking out of the house tonight. So that's why.
We're very careful on that one. All right. Well, we don't have any more comments. No need to shame you. Is moving on. I mean that with love. Item 2.2, which is yet another problem we have at the water district, our largest reservoir, which is 50% of our water storage. We've been ordered to take it down, and we're told it's going to take 10 years to repair. So I'm going to turn this over to our CEO to talk about this catastrophe.
All right, thank you, Chair Kremen, for providing a brief opening on that. And yes, you are correct. That's what we're working towards, is a 10-year time frame. And as you may know, Valley Water is constantly working to protect our community's drinking water, keep residents and businesses safe from flooding, natural disasters, repair and replace our multiple aging dams, reservoirs, and pipelines by reducing toxin hazards and contaminants in our waterways. And Anderson Dam and Reservoir has been a locally controlled supply of water supply, and getting the dam seismically retrofitted is one of Valley Water's highest priorities. And as such, I'm pleased that Valley Water broke ground on the Anderson Dam retrofit project just last summer. So with that, I'm going to turn over 2.2 Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit project status update over to Christopher Hakes, who is our Deputy Operating Officer for our Dam Safety and Capital Delivery Division, to provide an update. Mr.
Thank you, CEO Calendar. Thank you, Chair Kremen, Mayor Gilmore, and members of the board and the City of Santa Clara. Council, I am going to share my screen for a presentation real quick. And as soon as the slideshow starts. Okay. I'm assuming everybody could hear me or someone would be waving at me. Okay. I'm going to go through this relatively quickly because I think everyone is somewhat familiar with Anderson. It is our largest reservoir, holds 90,000 acre feet. Basically, we have 10 groundwater recharge reservoirs. Anderson can actually hold the other 9 within its footprint. The project for the seismic retrofit was started in 2012. That was after an independent analysis, but the project fundamentally has changed significantly since it began. And the latest change in 2020, due to a federal order from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has really shaped where we are now. And I'll kind of talk about what's in that order a little bit later in the presentation. Oops, I think one slide did not advance. Okay. So there are 2 sections of our project right now. Our original seismic retrofit project was broken into 2 stages. The first is the Anderson Dam Tunnel project, as well as a suite of projects which we call the FERC ordered compliance projects. What you're looking at right here is the capital project component. After this stage of construction, we'll go into the balance of the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit project, and I'll go through the elements on the next slide.
Chris.
Yes.
I don't believe your slides are advancing.
My slides are not advancing. I can advance them. I can see them. Let me see if I, what do you guys see if I don't go full screen?
I believe that's correct now.
Okay, so we will try to go back here. This was the background summary. Can everyone see the background summary slide? Okay. How about the slide that breaks down the 2 components, stages? Okay, so I told you about the stages. Here's the pretty picture that went with it. We'll go ahead and go to the next portion of the slide. This is all of the different components of both stages of seismic retrofit. Right now we're in stage 1, which is the installation of a low-level outlet pipe. This was mandated by FERC to increase the capacity and our ability to maintain the reservoir level. Right now, our current outlet pipe runs directly under the center of our embankment, which is unfortunate because if we do have an earthquake and our dam does slump, that outlet will be damaged and incapable of transmitting water out of the reservoir. We're increasing the capacity by about 5-fold initially, from 500 cubic feet per second to 2,000 cubic feet per second. You can think of a cubic foot per second as about the size of a basketball. So 500 basketballs per second right now, and theoretically combined after the 2 phases or to the 2 tunnels are in operation to 2,500 basketballs per second. Besides the low level outlet pipe, we're going to put in a high level outlet pipe. That is a new criteria from the Division of Safety of Dams, our state dam regulator, in order to, in the case of emergency, drain about 30% of the reservoir capacity over 7 calendar days. We're going to completely remove our liquefiable material in our embankment. When I say liquefiable, that means if you've ever stood on a beach, the sand seems very firm, but you start patting on it and the water kind of comes up and it becomes a little bit like pudding. So that would actually happen in the case of an earthquake to our existing embankment. So we're going to strip all that material away, leave our clay core in place, and then replace it with suitable material. Some of you may recall Orville in 2017 and the spillway failure they had. As a result of that, they've completely revised the design criteria, DSOD, Division of Safety of Dams for California. So we're going to replace our spillway in its entirety. And of course, we will have a temporary diversion system to drain the reservoir down to its bottom. So what happened on February 20th of 2020 when we received that FERC order? They basically gave us 6 different things to do. We had to immediately lower the reservoir, which we did. We were actually in compliance with that. We had to take all necessary measures to lower the reservation or the reservoir elevation to elevation 488. Basically, what that means is we took the reservoir down as far as we could through the existing outlet. That's about a 3% of capacity, and I'll show you a picture of that later. They also said that we, as I said, were to do the new design and construction of the outlet tunnel and then secure permits for the overall seismic retrofit project. So what does 3% of Anderson capacity look like? This is an overhead shot. That outline is what 3% represents. What it actually looks like visually is this, and it hasn't been this low since about 1987, which is the last time we actually drained the reservoir all the way to its bone dry state. This 3,000 acre feet will be there roughly for about 3 years, and then we'll take it down to bone dry and do our embankment construction. One of the things that's happened recently is we've updated our project costs. As you can see, there's a kind of brief history of where we've been on the left. When you see the 576 million from 2021, that was for a 5-year project that had a very limited scope of just the dam itself. None of the ancillary projects that are associated with the FERC order compliance project. We did add some additional funds in FY22 to account for the federal order, and some of those capital projects that we knew were being brought in, about 4 or so projects, which I'll have on a separate slide. But really, we updated the cost just this year to account for everything, basically. So that's transitioning from a 5-year project to a 2-stage 10-year project. All of the different environmental mitigation measures and conservation measures that needed to be roped in, as well as the dam safety direction and mandates that we were getting during our design review. What you can actually see is the bulk of the increase comes from extending the project from 5 years to 10 years. And there's a lot of time-dependent elements that we really endure by having to get to that longer duration. Inflation itself, it's big, big news. Everybody's been hearing about inflation. It's not doing us any favors in the construction industry. Even prior to this year, we were seeing about 3% inflation year over year. Right now, we're projecting $80 million of inflation just because of the lengthening of the project for 5 to 10 years. We also have some rework that's required because the project was broken into 2 parts. So we've lost our efficiency, the project's longer. We have time-dependent resources that are going to be necessary, construction management, design review, and all that kind of stuff. So basically, a large chunk of that change is from just extending the project. We also have our additional environmental costs, about 128 million. That's the cost of doing business for us at this point. It's been mandated by the federal regulatory agencies on the environmental side, the National Marine Fisheries Service primarily. And these are things, they're basically permitting not only construction of or reconstruction of the dam, but operation of the dam after it's done. They weren't around in 1950 when the dam was originally constructed. As a result, they are taking their opportunity to get their pound of flesh. We do have some other items, an underbid or an underestimation of the bid on the Anderson Dam Tunnel project, some safety regulations through the review process, and some other valley water controlled options. That would be like contingency that we put on top of the project in case of emergency. So where are we right now? These are the FOCP elements. There are 4 construction elements, 11 total elements. We have drawn down the reservoir. We are out to construction on the tunnel as well as our Cross Valley pipeline extension. Those are this is a conservation measure. We have had 3 other conservation measures that are currently in design. Basically, we've got the Coyote Perkins Dam replacement project, the flood management measures on Coyote Creek, and this is only for the increased flows from the new outlet system. There is another project for Coyote Creek coming later that is not associated with Anderson. And then we have avoidance and minimization measures for Steelhead. What might you see if you look out at the site? You'll see a lot of different things: bulldozers, compactors, rollers, as well as drilling equipment. You probably won't get to see the drilling equipment because this is from the inside of the tunnel. And if you've made your way inside one of the tunnels, you're in a bad place and get out. So if you were downstream of the dam, what would you see? If it ever rains, which at this point, who knows if it ever will, you will see the reservoir rise temporarily. You'll see increased flows in Coyote Creek. You'll hear noise from construction equipment, primarily Monday through Friday, but when they are tunneling, that could go through Saturday and even Sunday. Provided we don't get any rain, that water that's out there is going to heat up, probably grow some algae, get a little bit warmer, and it might start to smell. So where are we? We like to focus on the first half of the schedule because that's the one we know for sure how it's working out. We are currently in construction, projected to finish right around 2024. Our reservoir will remain at 3% of capacity. This second half, we are currently working to try to sandwich down that construction period. We're working with all our regulators to see if there's any way to do this faster. But right now, we are projected to take out to 2031 before we're fully restored with operations. Really, the construction should finish in about 2030. Why is it taking so long? How did we get to this place? It's because we have about 13 regulatory agencies between state, federal, county, and city. And each of these agencies has their own mandate. And as a result, it's difficult to get everyone together. We actually have our congressional delegation helping to bridge those gaps. That has been very helpful and is what's moving us forward at this point. I believe that takes us to the end of the presentation. Sorry that I couldn't give you guys the full screen view, but I will stop sharing and stand open for questions.
All right, we're going to actually take public comments first. Ms. King, do you have any comments? Or Mayor Gilmore, have you heard of any comment? Oh, Ms. Hardy also, also board comments too. Go for it.
Thank you. I didn't mean to derail your process. My understanding is Anderson is a Adobe core earthen dam, and it looks like most of what you need to do at this point is the tunneling, the new spillway, and then go back and fix the dam. So I'm wondering, because we see most of the cost is from lengthening out this, many projects, especially large ones such as this involving water, have gone to more of a design build to speed up that process. Has that been looked at all? Thank you.
Yes, we did look at the design build option through our permitting process. It was found to be, I don't want to say inoperable for our situation, but the level of risk associated with a large dam like this, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to design build. The contractor does tend to assume risk in that scenario in order to complete the project faster. With the regulators that we have on board that need to approve the design, we could see kind of an endless do loop there. And so we did look at the design build process and deemed it not the correct process for this construction project.
Any further, Director Lazat?
Thank you, Chair Kremen. Chris, you mentioned about the algae bloom and the smell. During what period might that happen? And if it in fact does happen, are there things that can be done to minimize it? Like, can you get rid of an algae bloom? What can be done?
So we would expect that to happen in the hotter summer months, basically when the dissolved oxygen in the water kind of dissipates. Generally speaking, the algae blooms are not necessarily what causes the smell. What causes the smell might be some of the fish that are present in the water that don't deal well with the low dissolved oxygen and they die. So a fish die off. In that case, the only thing that we can really do if that happens is to remove the dead fish. Sometimes we do that. A lot of times predatory animals will scavenge those and the problem kind of takes care of itself. The smell kind of peaks like 1 or 2 days and then it goes away naturally.
Okay, thanks. I was just concerned about something long-term. Thank you.
All right, are there any other board member? Raj? Good to see you.
My question is, I know we already seen the inflated cost by $589 million. So are we on track to fund all this thing and we don't even know what can further inflate, like do our budgets and all the funding requirements are good enough to put these 2 phases in line and complete on time, basically? Basically, my question is, like, is there source of funding which is fully secured for these two phases, basically?
Yes. So I can definitely address that. Our source of funding is fully secured. We have a little bit of money from our Safe Clean Water program, but the balance of the project is actually funded through water rates. That the project has been included at the current cost in our water rates and our projected water rates into the future. To help offset some of those costs, we are looking at federal and state grants. As everybody knows, the federal government passed the infrastructure project grant project process, and we are attempting to get in line for some of those funds. We're also talking at the state level to look if there's dam retrofit funds available. We've talked to Diane Feinstein's office, and they are championing trying to get additional funds. In addition, we actually are in line for a low-cost federal loan, cheaper than we can get mortgages these days through the WIFIA program, which is the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. So basically that helps defer the cost because these are funded, our projects are funded over kind of almost the life of the project, about 30 years of the project. So the funding is secured, but we are looking for ways to further offset those costs. and hopefully lower the cost to the general public.
Thank you.
All right, any more council people comments, board comments, or members of the public comments?
Chair, I have no public comments on Zoom. I will ask Ms. Pimentel if she has any e-comments.
I have none on this end. Thank you.
All right, I have one comment or
minutes, Chair.
question.
Sorry,
What would
I have one
happen?
more.
Oh, go for it.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I have a member of public that just raised his hand.
Sure.
Ali Saad.
Hello. May I ask regarding the time it takes to dig the tunnel? I look at it that most of your costs is time related and inflation. The US is one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world. Why is it that we cannot drill this tunnel in record time using technology that's available in the US? There's a company called Rollins in Ohio. They did some work in San Francisco. They did the Niagara Falls tunnel. They're able to do the equivalent of 100 meters a week. So may I understand why this delay?
So I'm happy to answer that question. Tunneling is highly dependent upon the ground that you're tunneling through. The softer the ground that you're tunneling through, the quicker you can proceed. So I'm unfamiliar with what some of the ground conditions are. San Francisco is mostly clay, which is actually quite easy to get through. In that situation, what you have to worry about is shoring so the tunnel doesn't collapse. We are basically using the readily available technology in the US. Basically, we have a tunneling contractor that was pre-qualified, is a preeminent contractor for tunneling in the area. But we are somewhat limited by some of the environmental concerns in the area. We can't just go whole hog night and day, basically with rigs everywhere. One, the site is constrained. We can't necessarily come at it from both sides. And even if we did, that is still limited in the amount of time that it takes. Basically, it takes a certain amount of time to tunnel through the rock. We do have some hard rock. If by any chance we incur some very, very hard rock, we might even have to blast. So there is some safety concerns as well. Generally speaking, what I like to say is not to compare apples and oranges, because without the background on both projects, it can kind of look a little bit different. I've often heard that Hoover Dam was built in 2 years. That is true. It's a completely different situation. There was no environmental regulation back then. You actually had over 1,000 people die during the construction of Hoover Dam because they had guys in harnesses swinging to the abutments and literally throwing dynamite there to clear some of the rock. It's a different age that we live in right now. We're in one of the most environmentally conscious states in the US. So what works other places doesn't necessarily work here.
All right. Do we have any further questions, comments, public comments? Do we have any clerk people?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Said has raised his hand again. Shall I allow him to speak?
Okay, one more time, sure. Only. Mr. Said?
I fully understand where you're coming from, CEO. I have, in my history, I have worked with many, many, many companies that have done infrastructure projects. And I can assure you that the technology that is available today can more than overcome all of the issues that you have mentioned. For me, the issue is how do you mitigate the problems that are seen with lack of water, with the drought, and how is it that we can quickly get back to a situation in where we don't have to go into mandatory rations, we don't have to be able to charge. Santa Clara County has 650,000 households. If you divide this budget that you're talking about by the number of households, it may seem an insignificant amount, but that is not necessarily the case. I really want to be able to, is there a way to understand or get hold of how is it that we can help each other to ensure that this thing is done in a reasonable time and to ensure that it is done environmentally correctly without deaths like you mentioned in the Hoover Dam, because I don't like to see people swinging on ropes. Bottom line is, how can we work together to ensure this happen? Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I'll have someone from Valley Water get back to you to hear about this and any other matters that are.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Director Santos, yes.
Yes, let me give Mr. Said a blunt answer. The answer is not the Valley Water District. There's 13 regulatory or different agencies. If everyone in government did their job, we wouldn't do 10 years. That's the bottom line. It's not about the people here. It's not about us. We work with everybody. Those are the obstacles we have to find and climb, and that's what increases the cost and all this, what I call bureaucracy. So that's the bottom line.
Thank you, Director Santos. Okay, so now that we've gone through the challenge of we haven't even gone through it. We've discussed the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit project, also known as the 10-year nightmare. We're going to move on to item 2.3, which is update on purified and recycled water. And I'm going to ask the CEO to introduce our amazing staff.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Chair. As both the council and Valley Water Board knows, having a drought-proof local supply of water is critical. The ongoing droughts that we have faced have really proven that purified water projects are not only necessary, but very much needed. And I want to thank City Manager Santana for her true leadership relative to ensuring that both Valley Water and the City of Santa Clara are closely working together towards finding solutions for purified water. And this is going to be a fairly short presentation. I know that the council just received a presentation in December, so I'm going to ask Kristen Struve, our Assistant Officer with our Water Supply Division, to go ahead and provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Rick. Good evening, Honorable Board and Council. My name is Kirsten Struve, Assistant Officer for Water Supply Division. And yes, I was just here with the Santa Clara City Council on December 7th. So we're just going to focus on what has happened since then. And one of the things that's happened since then, that on December 14th, the Valley Water Board of Directors directed staff to finalize agreements with the City of Palo Alto to locate the proposed project in Palo Alto. And the board also directed staff to continue discussions with the cities of San Jose and Santa Clara for a potential future potable water reuse project at the existing Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center at the San Jose Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility. And the purified water project will use the treated wastewater from the Palo Alto plant and purify it for conveyance to the Los Gatos recharge system. That's about 20 miles worth of pipeline with about 5 within Santa Clara. And since December, Valley Water and Santa Clara staff have continued to meet on the preferred pipeline alignment and the need for a future pipeline operating agreement between Santa Clara and Valley Water. Since December, we have also continued our outreach campaign, including the new ads featuring 49ers and Sharks players that Chief Baker mentioned earlier. We also have ads playing in movie theaters, including in Santa Clara. And we've continued outreach to other municipalities and property owners along the pipeline, as well as stakeholders and the public. And our procurement process, as well as development of the environmental impact report, are ongoing, and we plan to release both the request for proposal and the draft EIR in the spring of this year, and then bring a recommendation to our board on the private partner by the end of the year. And we will continue to work with city staff throughout the process and thank them very much for their partnership. And that's all I had, and I'm open for questions.
Great. Ms. Hardy, Councilperson Hardy, you first with that.
You know how I feel about water.
Knowledge.
Yes, you know how I feel about water, and also serve on the TPAC. I'm curious about the time frame now that you were looking at a Bowers-Kiley corridor. Obviously, that goes right through my district, and it looks like you're going to be tearing up the road there and that is a major thoroughfare for Santa Clara. I'm also curious about the capacity. I know the capacity right now of the purified water treatment plant that is right there near our water treatment plant for purified water is 9 million gallons per day. And my understanding is that is the same capacity of what the Palo Alto would be that you plan to recharge the groundwater with. What percentage of use, if it's the same amount or if it's larger, if I'm not right on the 9 million gallons per day, what percentage of our use is that, or what percentage of the capacity of the underwater aquifer is that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. So in terms of the Bowers-Kiley route, we will be likely in construction around 2024, but it's, it's a very large project. So when exactly is not yet determined, as some of the design will happen through the request for proposal process, and then following the board's determination of which of the 4 shortlisted teams will be contracting and partnering with us. But we will definitely stay in touch throughout and make sure that appropriate outreach occurs to those neighborhoods. We have some experience doing that type of outreach with the city of Sunnyvale and the long pipeline we helped build there. And so, we're preparing for that outreach and have been for a while. And, if any of our outreach team would like to add anything that I might have missed, please do. And then in terms of the capacity, the San Jose facility produces about 8 million gallons per day, and it is blended with the recycled water to enhance the quality so that it can be used for landscape and industrial purposes. And the Palo Alto facility will be about 9 or 10 million gallons per day. And it's only a small portion of the space in the underground aquifer, but it will make a really big difference, especially during droughts like these. Right now, what we use to recharge at the Los Gatos recharge system is both local and imported water. And we use way more groundwater than would naturally recharge with just local water. So what this purified water will do is basically take the place of the imported water so that we can use it in other places in the county. And then if I forgot anything, anyone else, please add.
All right, Suds, good to see you.
Thank you, Chair. Everyone keeps talking about direct potable reuse. And of course, that depends on state and federal regulations. But when do you think that's going to happen? It seems like that would be a more efficient process than groundwater recharge and then repumping. Do you have any timeframes for that, when that might happen, and how would that affect this project?
The time frame is that the state will be developing the regulations to facilitate direct potable reuse within about 3 years. We are closely following that and participating in that along with other water agencies. And we are preparing this project to take advantage of that as well, so that it can be flexible, but we will need the groundwater recharge regardless. It is our largest storage. Many of our retailers use the groundwater. It also protects against the land sinking and subsidence that Chief Baker talked about earlier. So, and the direct potable is, it sounds, like it might be simpler, but it actually will have a lot more safeguards on the treatment and monitoring and pre-treatment. And so we actually took an analysis to our recycled water committee to show that, what the cost differential is. And given the drought emergency right now, we feel that we need to move, our board felt that we need to move forward now with this because we will need it regardless.
Thank you.
If I could add real quickly, we do see this project right now being that IPR, and actually, interestingly enough, it'll recharge in the Los Gatos system, which actually then feeds the aquifer, which the city of Santa Clara does pump out of. But we do have a recycled water master plan, a purified water master plan, and so understanding that DPR could be part of our future is definitely, something that's on the horizon here. We do know that there is other wastewater that could be available in the county for other projects. And as we move forward, we definitely want to have the best value for where we're headed. And we do, although this project right now is slated to be IPR, we do see DPR or something else along in our future. Thank you.
Mr. Baker, for those that don't know and, follow Twitter, what is DPR and IPR for the public?
Thank you. IPR is indirect potable reuse. That's such as, I'll use a lot of terms here. What we're talking about here is we're taking purified water, we're going to put it in a recharge basin. It's going to infiltrate into the ground, and then over time, it will then be pumped out again by the user. Direct potable reuse would be, DPR is direct potable reuse. That's where the water is taken, the effluent from the drinking water, drinking purified water directly from the facility is then put straight to a pipe, then served to the customer directly. So indirect has a buffer type in between. Direct is typically direct to the customer.
Thank you for explaining it to those that aren't Twitter influencers. Raj, you got a question?
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair. My question is on DPR versus IPR, basically. Cost benefit analysis, because we are putting in so much capital investment into our IPR we are doing from Palo Alto to all the way to Los Gatos reservoir side. So did we do that? Especially my question is because within 3 years, if we have a DPR use, direct potable use of that water, and that 9 million per day water can be used directly, then all the investment we'll be making on our infrastructure will be waste. So did we do that detailed cost benefit analysis so that we don't make a bad investment which will not be used, where we can use DPR? I learned that term right now, I can use it. So what is the answer on that, cost benefit analysis and funding, and where we stand on that? I hope you understood my question, although I touched various data points.
Yeah, we definitely did that analysis because just like you said, intuitively it seems that direct potable might be more efficient, but it actually has a really high cost for monitoring, for different technology that we don't quite know all the regulations for yet, and also for the wastewater treatment plant. So our wastewater treatment plant partners would have to implement additional controls in their systems. As you heard from the previous presentation, costs are only going up, and this project is being delivered through a public-private partnership. It had a record response. We got 8 submittals for our request for qualifications, from international firms that are really, that know that this project can be feasibly implemented. Whereas a direct potable, we don't know what the regulations will be yet. It isn't necessarily less expensive. And we also did the analysis that we need this regardless because people are using groundwater. And it also helps, keep all our infrastructure up. So we need the water for the ground anyway, and this investment will not be wasted. But once the regulations are in place, if there's additional water, for example, through a partnership with San Jose Santa Clara's regional wastewater facility, we would definitely be well positioned to take advantage of that and do direct potable reuse.
I would like to say, Director Santos' comment that a lot of bureaucracy is involved. So some countries are doing direct potable use of the purified water, basically. And here we are scared of these agencies and creating that bureaucracy and spending more of our public funds into a project which probably maybe should not have gone through that much of scrutiny by the different agencies, and we don't have an answer for whether we can use direct potable water or not. So that's again another bureaucratic way of working in the government. Thank you.
All right, and Councilperson Watanabe.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. The first one regards the pipeline, and when would the outreach potentially be to the community for the pipeline?
We will begin soon as with the release of the EIR. We've still been, working on finalizing the preferred alignment, so it's only been a little while. And then once we have our draft EIR for release, we would notify, the public about the availability and to comment on it. Mm-hmm. And we will have outreach surrounding that. And if I miss anything, I'll defer to Rachel or Lynn.
Right, and I think I'd like to add, Kirsten, you're right. We will start very shortly as the draft EIR will start to come out, and we do commit to coordinate with your staff and your council to understand where things are going. Rachel, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chief Baker. Rachel Gibson, Chief of External Affairs for Valley Water. Yeah, Aaron summed it up best. We are committed to working very closely with the City of Santa Clara and our partners on this critical priority project.
Great, thank you. And thank you for those answers. Do you have any idea of what the cost could potentially be, and do you foresee them escalating or?
Yeah, so the cost currently is estimated at about $700 million. But the way that this project will be implemented is quite new to us. We are using a public-private partnership. So the way we will pay for the project is once the water starts flowing to the Los Gatos recharge system, basically our private partner will be charging us for per unit of water. And we will know that price before we enter into an agreement. So what we're trying to do right now is to provide as much information in our request for proposal as possible so that our private partners can gauge the risks and give us a good price. So that our board may then make a decision at the end of the year as to which of the private partners we will be partnering with.
And I'd like to add, actually, is that we've already, as part of this design, build, finance, operating, maintain P3, we've already forecasted this into the rates as we move forward, and CFO Taylor we'll talk about this a little bit more, or may be able to answer some further questions either during this item or at the item coming up future in the evening.
All right, do we have any additional council member, board member, or public comments on this very interesting project? Clerk people, anyone write in? Hit us up on Snapchat? I don't think so. So if not, why don't we move on to item 2.4, which is a very exciting, if you believe in sea level rise, and for those that don't, you can probably get off the Zoom right now, the South San Francisco Bayshore Project Phase 1 to protect the city. Can we have a presentation on that, CEO or staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, we do. And just real briefly, the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Restoration Project will restore 16,500 acres of tidal wetlands when completed, and will provide protection for all of the South Bay cities that touch the San Francisco Bay. And a special thank you goes to Mayor Gilmore for the City of Santa Clara's support for the Shoreline project to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The City of Santa Clara's support is critical and crucial in getting this project funded, financed, and completed. And as everyone can imagine, is these kinds of mega projects that always require a regional and cooperative approach. And again, we appreciate the City of Santa Clara's advocacy so that we are protected now and into the future. And for our brief presentation, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Rochelle Brink, our Chief Operating Officer for Watersheds to give an update on item 2.4 and an update on the San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project Phase 1.
Great, thank you, CEO Calendar, and good evening, Chair Kremen, Mayor Gilmore, and honorable members of the board and council. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and provide an update on the South San Francisco Bay Shoreline Project for the Phase 1 area in North San Jose. This project is a partnership project with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Coastal Conservancy, Valley Water, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as, we work closely with our local jurisdiction within each project phase. The intent of this project is to protect the community's land side of the proposed shoreline from coastal storm events, protect against future sea level rise, and provide ecosystem restoration and recreational opportunities. The first phase is occurring in San Jose, and it will protect the communities of Alviso, the regional wastewater facility, as well as the Advanced Water Purification Center. The project is approximately 4 miles long, and it's broken up into 4 reaches, and it's bound on the west by the Alviso Slough Guadalupe River. The Guadalupe River is a 100-year flood protection project, providing riverine flood protection, so the project would tie into that area. On the east side is the Coyote Creek Bypass, also a 100-year fluvial system. So again, providing tying into a riverine system. Once the project is completed, it will provide integrated coastal and riverine flood risk management for the area lying landward of the proposed levee. The project has 5 reaches. The first 2 reaches, reaches 1, and then the second segment is broken up into reaches 2, 3, and then there's a reach 4, 5 segment near the regional wastewater facility. These reaches are levees. We do have to cross 2 major infrastructures, the Union Pacific Railroad as well as Artesian Slough, and there are proposed gate closure structures. At the Union Pacific Railroad, there's also a proposed pedestrian bridge that would go over. At Artesian Slough, the gate structure would serve as a crossing. With that, I want to go ahead and kind of go into where the project status is for construction and costs. Construction of reaches 1, 2, 3 has finally begun in December 2021. This was after 2 years of, overcoming a lot of challenges to get the contract awarded, and it was actually awarded in August. So the anticipated construction completion of the first levee element only for reaches 1, 2, 3 is going to be through January 2024, or approximately 3 years. The cost of that levee award was $129.8 million. And Valley Water share is $58.4 million, which we've paid in full already. I want to draw your attention that this cost is much more than originally thought. The project was authorized in 2015 at a total cost of $194 million. And in 2021, the Army Corps' cost district updated the entire project cost, mainly as a result of awarding this levy and seeing the cost increase. The new updated cost is $545 million. The project 15, however, did receive full bipartisan 2018 budget funds of $124 million, which is the federal share. Valley Water had accounted for the $194 million cost and pretty much budgeted for that cost, and our cost share was in hand. However, when the reaches 1, 2, 3 was awarded and these significant costs were realized, Valley Water had to go ahead and move all our funds just to make sure the reaches 1, 2, 3 went out to construction to get this project started. So this is a significant cost increase, obviously, of almost 3 times the original estimated cost. During these years from 2015, Valley Water has worked very hard with the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority to secure grant funding. We've secured $61.7 million thereabouts. We've also been working very closely with the Department of Water Resources to secure subventions reimbursement funds. But as a result, all our monies have been put towards reaches 1, 2, 3, leaving reaches 4 through 5 elements only partially funded at this time. So Throughout the last couple of years, we know we've had many conversations with the regional wastewater facility staff, as well as City of San Jose and Santa Clara, both all at the table, discussing way forwards on reaches 4 to 5. At this point, we do have a shortfall. Not only do we have a local shortfall to be able to put out reaches 4 to 5 into construction, but we have a shortfall that we've committed to cover for the federal government, because their funding they received is a fixed amount of that 124 million. So what we have been doing is working closely with the Army Corps, and we are requesting some time throughout this entire year to figure out a way forward. You know, number one, we don't have the funds to put out the second levees for construction. Number two, we are restricted by our CEQA requirements and the number of trucks that can be driven through the area to deliver material. So we don't want reaches 1, 2, 3 fill delivery competing with reaches 4 to 5. In addition, we don't want contractors to be competing for that fill to be able to bring out to this site. We need to also look at what time we need to be able to address this funding shortfall. You know, we need to look at our local cost share, and that was one of the letters that CEO Calendar mentioned that we appreciate you signing on, because we are working closely with our lobbyists to try and secure funding. San Jose has also been able to assist us with that, sending their own letters. Whoops, sorry about that. And the last thing is, we do know some other areas within our South Bay area that have been able to construct the levees at a much significantly lower cost. So we want to realize not only lessons learned from maybe that construction effort, but our current effort going on in 1, 2, 3, and look at ways to see if we can do 4, 5 differently, just to be able to complete this project. So with that, you know, we need to incorporate lessons learned, look for funding, try and lower our costs. And lastly, we really do want to look to ways to cost share and for assistance to look at our right-of-way needs for the 4-5 area in the regional wastewater facility area. Lastly, you know, no funds did come in from the latest Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And we do appreciate, again, the support for the letters that went out to General Spellman, the Assistant Secretary, the Army Connor, our Acting Director Young. We're going to need this continued support to request these federal funds, as well as to look at other ways to close this funding gap. And with that, I just stand ready, open for comments.
All right, do we have any public council person, board member comments with Ms. Hardy first?
Sorry, this is my wheelhouse. Okay. I'm asking this question, I already know the answer, but this is a lot for our residents, because first off, when you have a flood, that's when you should be planning for a drought. When you have a drought, you should be planning for a flood. And this is forward thinking, so this is good. But you'll also have a lot of people say, wait a minute, you're spending all this money to fix the levees. Why are we not building desalinization plants to take care, you know, to use this water? And I've had to explain many times about the cost of desalinization, and because of the large suspended solids versus the purified water. And I wonder if you could just give some numbers for this. And Krista may remember that I use the term, you have to clean up the fish toilet. So helping our residents understand that it would be very expensive for us to do a desalinization situation as opposed to our purified water and cleaning up what we have used here. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to have to turn to Kirsten Struve to assist with answering this.
Sure, no problem. So desalination is basically the same technology as what we will be using for the purified water project, but it starts obviously with a higher salinity water that has contaminants in it as well. The public may see the beautiful blue ocean or bay and think that is cleaner than treated wastewater, but it actually isn't. And so that's why desalination, because it has to remove more salt and more contaminants will actually be more expensive than the purification of treated wastewater.
All right, does that answer the question and account for the fountain behind your head? Hopefully that's a purified water. Suds.
That's
go
a
for it.
hopefulness.
Yes,
Well,
aspirational.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you very
we
much,
should-
Gary.
Mr. Chairman, we should also respond to some of our constituents as we have in the past that, we don't give up on anything. We're Silicon Valley, we believe in science. And so we have a joint project and an investigative project that we have had for a long time in Contra Costa County, which is a scientific review project of desalination and its costs and its availability and possibility all the way down to our area through the whole peninsula. So we're all involved in looking at it. Someday, somehow, some way, if electrical costs are lowered in any way, then we'd be ready, we'd be prepared to include desalination like we are with recycling. So it's not that we don't want to do it, it's that, as Kirsten pointed out, the cost is prohibitive now, today, but we haven't given up on looking at everything. So we do have that demonstrative project that we continue to hope that, as you mentioned, hope that someday it'll be a possibility. We expect to be ready when that happens. So just wanted to assure you, as well as our constituents, that just because it's no right now doesn't mean that we won't look at it and that we're not trying to stay up with it.
Thank you, Director Estimata. Saad, you got a comment here?
Yeah, clearly sea level rise is already happening. I heard this interesting story on NPR about Pacifica falling into the ocean. And what I wanted to know was, part of this project seems to be tidal marsh restoration. And didn't we approve Measure AA to preserve tidal marshes? Is any money coming from Measure AA for this project? And then if Reach 4 and 5 are not done because we don't have the money, does that threaten our wastewater facility? And preserving the tidal marshes would protect against the surges that we have, any type of surges that we have from tides or storms. So those marshes are always important for protecting against those types of surges. So I'm just curious about all of that. Thank you.
Sure, I can answer the question regarding the Safe Clean Water Program for Measure AA that the Santa Clara County residents has voted for. The first initiative had about 17 million towards this project. And a lot of that funding went already towards design of the first 3 reaches and procurement of the necessary right-of-way from the Alviso Marina to the Artesian Slough area, as well as to some of the delivery of the fill material. The cost of that has really risen astronomically from, we paid approximately $17 to $30 a cubic yard, and the Corps is now paying close to $100 a cubic yard. So that material procurement has really gone up. Safe Clean Water funding for the first phase of this, and that funding is done. So that has been secured for this area. There, in the second Safe Clean Water program that the voters approved, a significant amount of dollars were secured for the future phases. Phase 2, which is under planning right now, and the phase 3, which is awaiting federal funding to begin its planning. So yes, Safe Clean Water funds have been put towards this effort. We, like I noted, additionally went out for the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority dollars, which is a 9-county Bay Area tax initiative. And some of those dollars are coming this way. And then again, the subventions. But the recent letters we've sent out, we're looking for support in securing additional state funds. I think a real recent letter was for $10 million of state funds. We just need to continue looking at ways to lower the project cost and secure that funding gap. For the restoration, this project does include the restoration of the salt ponds. I can bring that image up again real quick. It's easier. Pictures work with 1,000 words, they say. So the ponds A9 through 15 and A18 were for restoration. The Coastal Conservancy is partnering on this because they really want to realize the restoration of A9 through 15. And the only way to do that was to have what I call the line of defense or levees in place to prevent any waters coming and wrapping around and flooding the community even more once these ponds become breached and bring the sea closer to the community. Again, 4 or 5. The way water would come in is through Coyote Creek and come in through this pond if it were breached and then wrap around this direction. With this major portion of levee built, it does significantly stop the majority of flows that are coming from this direction. What it does leave is some flows until we can get this portion of the project built. It does leave some flows being able to come around here in a very extreme event, but the volume of water reaching Alviso would be much less. In addition, the wastewater facility itself, the major portions of the structures are on high ground. So where the water really will go is through these, I guess, partly retired and active lagoons, and then wrap around through here and wrap around through what we call Los Esteros Street.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilperson Watanabe.
Thank you, Chair. I have some similar concerns regarding the wastewater treatment plant and reaches 4 and 5. You know, I appreciate the concerns regarding the funding. There was a notation about phase 1 did not receive any funding, any infrastructure funding, but do you foresee that there will be future applications to get some additional infrastructure funding that has, you know, just been allocated through the recent bills and laws that were passed in Washington? That's one question. And I guess number 2 is just to, you know, just reiterate the concerns for the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, there's a lot of money being put into that plant right now. And I probably don't have to tell you, I mean, Santa Clara has about a 20% stake in that project. And you know, with all the money that's being invested in the wastewater treatment plant right now, you know, it's imperative that we protect it. So how is the timeline impacted as a result of, you know, the funding and
right,
the project stopped?
Yes, so we have been continuing conversations with the regional wastewater facility staff. A lot of it has to do with coordinating the facility's infrastructure improvements, as well as coordinating when trucks would be moving through this area to build the 4 or 5 levee. And some of the challenges there were, you know, meeting the schedule needed for both. Another challenge is, like I said, the field delivery from both projects and limitations from our CEQA requirements, saying so many trucks per day are only allowed. We will continue these discussions. We are trying to roll out 1, 2, 3, the levee, to see if there are better ways to do means and accounting to do the 4 or 5 area. In addition, identifying maybe more significant material sources. We do need the city on board working with us though, and, you know, helping to coordinate ingress, egress through the facility area, helping identify areas where material can be procured, because that's the largest cost, being able to stockpile it there. You know, and I know originally A18 many years ago when this project began in 2005, we were working closely with the city. The master plan was put out for this facility. The master plan, you know, did show that the shoreline levee as a baseline for 100-year protection, and that you need to move from there to a 500-year level of protection. And all along, original discussions were that A18 would be transferred to the project as part of the contributions, but we know things change, costs change, interests change, and the latest discussions were that the facility was looking for cost reimbursement of A18. Those just drive this cost up further. We're already at 545 million, and then that does not include the cost of A18, which we would have to secure. So we would really like to continue working on finding a way forward in this. That's why I mentioned, we really need to look at potential cost sharing partnership now, as well as, realizing ways the city can contribute the real estate needs for this project. One difficulty with receiving the money the way this project did, the federal dollars at the 124 million from the Bipartisan Act, is that's a emergency disaster fund. And as such, in an emergency, those funds are to be used to build a project. And in doing that, the government expects all agencies to work towards that, not charging each other to build that. And that is one of the challenges we're seeing with the way the funds came in. And that is why the recent Jobs Act infrastructure bill, those funds cannot be mixed with the others. So Valley Water is going to continue to work different avenues to see if we can get federal legislative fixes to be able to secure those dollars.
I see. Okay. Well, if we need to write some more letters, we can write some more letters as well. Thank you.
All right, Councilperson Park.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. I mean, through this presentation and the previous presentations, I am hearing a lot about cost overruns. And again, costs have only gone up through the time of COVID, and costs generally don't go down over time. I want us to be realistic about costs, and I'm kind of concerned about how this will affect future project proposals, meaning I want to make sure that we're planning and proposing what is best for the area regardless of costs, and then find the means through the partnerships and through the funding sources that you mentioned to ensure that we're doing the things. I don't want costs to be, cost may delay implementation, but we need to bring up the proposals. We need to bring up the issues as soon as we can, and then find the sources to do that. And as the other council members have said, we'll be willing to, do outreach, to our city, to other cities, to other people to help with the funding. But I'm very concerned at how this will affect future project proposals when we're already so far behind on our current projects, and it doesn't look like the costs are going to go down. Thank you.
All right, moving on to Director Santos.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Park, this is definitely going to help your development in Santa Clara. The water district is the one that's paying for it. We're asking you folks just to give us a hand what you're doing. And Council Member Watanabe, you're totally right. This protects all your assets and so on. I can tell you from a man in my family, I've lost everything I own 3 times to floods. So I know what it feels like and what happens. It takes the rest of your life to overcome it. Director Esther Mayer and myself went to Katrina after the fact and saw the devastation in Louisiana. So when you see all these things and see what happens, this is prevention. And thanks to the wisdom of Senator Feinstein, and you're right, Kathy, you got to keep those letters coming in from Ro Khanna and Senator Feinstein, because we need funding. And the water district's the one that's on hook and paying for everybody from San Jose to Santa Clara to Sunnyvale to you name it. You all get the benefits, but we need each other's help to help get funding. Thank you.
Councilman Jane. Councilperson.
Yes, as I recall, a few years ago, the city of Foster City looked at the insurance cost to every homeowner of sea level rise versus a parcel tax to pay for the levies. And they found that the parcel tax to pay for the levies was far cheaper than having everyone have the increased insurance. Is that at play here? Is insurance going to basically, be this hidden cost that people are not paying attention to? And is there appetite for people realizing that this would save them insurance?
Is this well, the city of San Jose and Santa Clara are responsible for the community rating system Is this a question towards the city council, city staff?
I guess I'm trying to
I can
understand,
tell you the
has
last
anyone
item.
thought about how much insurance is going to go up? Because insurance seems to be, with wildfires and everything, insurance is just skyrocketing everywhere.
Yes, last I understood and checked, which was several years ago, cost of insurance in Alviso was averaging about $1,800 a property for the residences.
And do you have any idea how that's been going up?
I believe it's probably risen between there and 2,000 per property. There's approximately 2,000 residences that live in the community of Alviso, and this does not include all the structures at the regional wastewater facility. So, you multiply that, and that's quite a few dollars. Again, we have done our Safe Clean Water program. We have done the 9-county Bay Area parcel tax. Is this something San Jose or Santa Clara can consider? You're the ones that do participate in the community rating system to drive down those costs for your community.
Right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
All right.
A quick
Go on.
answer. Yeah, the big problem is with assessments, of course, you need a 2/3 vote. That's the overwhelming issue, I think. So it may, you're right, it will be, I think, at some point, cheaper for folks to pay special assessment than insurances. But you need a 2/3 vote, and I think that's the big stumbling block, unless you can convince people that even though it is cheaper, you know how hard it is to convince 2/3 to get a 2/3 vote. So that's really a problem. But I also wanted to say, as Councilman Park was raising, I think the issue that, I've always expressed up here, which is we don't just need to look at the cost of something. We need to look at what the cost of not doing it is and then compare it. So you're right. We need to find out what we need, what the solution is, and then deal with costs. Otherwise, we're working backwards and we can't really find solutions.
Thank you, Director Estamera. Councilperson Becker.
Thank you, Chair. So I think Councilmember Park covered a lot of what I was kind of thinking about a lot, but it's about pricing, the prices of these projects jumping. I mean, I saw one from 100 million all the way to 500. That's a concern to our residents, the concern to myself, but the reality that we're in right now, and I think everyone's covered it, is the inflation. And I see it when I'm going to put gas in my car. I see it when I'm going to buy groceries. So it's understandable what's happening. I'm glad that we're taking care of this now and we're addressing these problems now before it gets too late. And that, my generation and the generation after me are going to be able to live in a safe environment. So I appreciate that presentation. And I do agree with what Councilmember Watanabe was saying, that we do need to get out there and send more letters. If we have to, we need to be a little more proactive. And if you need that, please feel free. I will always be willing to help too.
Thank you.
Excellent. Do we have any more council comments, board comments, or members of the public? All right.
At this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so then we're going to move from 2.4 talking about sea level rise to, who would guess, given all the expenses we talked about, water rates. I bet, given all the costs, I have an idea they're not going to go down. So let's hear. I bet it's going to be expensive.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. As everyone knows, Valley Water is currently in the midst of our rate setting process, and I understand that the council wanted to better understand Valley Water staff's preliminary FY 22-23 groundwater production charge analysis. And I've heard all the concerns of the council as well as the public on the increased costs, including it tonight. And just as you've heard with our Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit project, the vast majority of recent cost increases to our capital projects are fueled by various factors such as inflation due to project schedule changes, changes to regulatory requirements, which includes new environmental and construction standards, the addition of previously unforeseen work and supply chain and workforce shortages caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. What you're going to be seeing in this presentation are the challenges that we as an entire community are facing with obtaining an emergency water supply and the associated costs. What you're going to be able to quickly be able to tell is how the current and ongoing drought emergency is putting a pressure on potential water rates. And this is exactly why Valley Water staff is doing everything possible to make sure that we're making the best recommendations to the Valley Water Board of Directors to smooth the rate impacts associated with the emergency purchase of water and the impact of inflation and construction costs on our projects. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Darren Taylor, our Chief Financial Officer, to lead us in a presentation.
And thank you very much for that, CEO Calendar. And good evening, Chair Kremen and members of the board, and Mayor Gilmore and members of the council. I'm Darren Taylor. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at Valley Water. And item 2.5 is an update on the preliminary groundwater and treated water charges, the analysis for FY23. And so what I plan to do is summarize a presentation that was provided to our board on January 10th. And I want to start by saying that staff has not yet finalized the proposed water rates for FY23. At this point in time, what we've done is prepared a preliminary analysis, and the point of this presentation that was delivered to the board on January 10th was to give them an understanding of that financial analysis that has been done to date and show them those preliminary projections, and then obtain board feedback that could be incorporated into the staff recommendation that is currently being developed. And so with that, here are the topics that I plan to touch on this evening. I'll start with a couple of background slides, and then I'm going to talk about the drought. And you kind of heard about that in CEO Calendar's opening remarks. I'll touch on that and the impact that the drought is having on the preliminary analysis and those preliminary rate projections. In fact, it's the main factor driving the rate projections that you'll see in the next couple of years. I'll talk about water usage projection, which is heavily impacted by the drought. And then I'll get into some of the financial analysis really quickly and show you the rate projections that we have in this preliminary analysis. And then I'll end it with other information, schedule, and summary. And so just by way of background, I'll start by saying that Valley Water is the groundwater steward for the county, primary wholesale water provider. And I like to tell my neighbors that Valley Water is responsible for operating and maintaining large infrastructure that makes up the system that serves 2 million people. So the large infrastructure being things like dams and water treatment plants and huge pipelines that you could walk inside of. And this next slide shows a map of our groundwater benefit zones. We have 4 benefit zones in the county, and the zone that Santa Clara is located in is the green zone. It's zone W2 in the northern part of the county. And so we levy charges and treated water rates that helps recoup the cost to serve each particular zone. And so I'll talk about the drought and the impact that it's having. Just the emergency water purchases alone are projected to be just under $70 million over the next 3 years. The emergency conservation activities are projected to be just under $20 million over the next 3 years. And those are critical expenses to ensure water supply in the county as we battle this drought. And then at the same time, water usage is going down. And we are projecting that the board's call for mandatory 15% conservation compared to 2019 will be achieved in FY23. And that results in lower revenue to pay for our highly fixed cost structure. And during the last historic drought that occurred between roughly 2014 and 2017, our board adopted a 19.7% increase in water charges in FY16 and a 19.9% increase in water charges in FY17 for zone W2, that green zone. And the situation today that we're facing is quite similar to that historic drought that we faced just a few years ago in terms of costs going up and water use going down. And now I'll talk about water usage. And this slide here presents the water usage that's district managed. It translates to revenue for Valley Water. And let's look at what happened during the historic drought. If you look at the FY14 year, by the way, the columns in green are actuals, the red is budget, and the blue is last year's projection of water use. And during the historic drought, we see water use decline dramatically. Of course, we wanted it to, but that's a 30% decline from FY14 to FY16, where we hit that low point. And then you see the water usage, once the drought ends, you see it start rebounding back in FY17, FY18. And then in FY19, you see it dip a little bit there due to a wet spring. And so it's interesting to note that wet springs, if we have rain that's kind of consistent through the February, March, April, even May timeframe, that causes homeowners to and residences to delay turning on their sprinklers, and we see water usage decline in those years. And so that was the cause of that dip there in FY19. Then we see it coming back in FY20, and then in FY21 coming back even further. And then here we are in FY22. We show the budget there in red, and then in blue is prior year projection. And then what we're showing in that dashed black line is what we're calling our preliminary baseline projection. And so with the trend that we're seeing with the water usage reduction, we know that that's going to come in below budget in FY22, as you see in that black dash line, and then continue to go down in FY23 as the drought continues. And then what we're projecting is that the drought will end and that the water usage will start rebounding back in a very similar fashion to what we saw during the last historic drought. And we have discussed this projection with our water retail customers in depth. And we did receive affirmation from our water retail customers that this baseline projection that you're looking at is what they believe is the best assumption for right now. Now, back in November, when we were started to talk to the board about the upcoming rate setting process, the board asked us to take a look at water usage scenarios that would assume water usage does not bounce back to the prior year projection. And so we did that. And we did look at some what if scenarios, what if water usage didn't bounce back, so that the board could be well informed as to what that looks like. And later on, I'll show you the impacts of what those scenarios look like in terms of the water rate projection. And so this next slide shows the cost projection for the water utility. It's in a stacked bar format, with the stack and the lower portion of the graph representing the operations and maintenance costs, and including the debt service line. That's the green portion of the graph that shows the debt service is increasing over time, largely driven by periodic debt issuances to help fund in advance the capital improvement program. And you see in FY28, the purified water program. That's our water services agreement with our P3 provider. Once that water starts flowing, we'll be paying for that water that begins in FY28 as projected now. And then at the very top of this graph, you see the light blue portion of that graph. That's the capital program. And that's the key driver of the long-term water rate projection. We are in an era of investment in new water supply facilities, as well as reinvestment in existing facilities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on this next slide. And so staff believes that smart infrastructure investments are needed today. They're critical to providing safe, clean water in the county, and that investing now is the most cost-effective way to get critical multi-year projects done. And there's no better time to sort of make that point than now, when we see the impact of this inflation that has gripped the nation recently. And some of the priority infrastructure investments needed include fixing Anderson Dam to address public health and safety concerns and relieve operational restrictions, the upgrade of Rinconada Water Treatment Plant to extend the service life of that plant that was built in the 1960s and expand that plant's capacity, building local storage with the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project, to add water storage and help us face extended droughts into the future, and expanding purified water, which would provide an incremental drought-proof water supply for the county. And so with the upward pressure on water rates, staff developed 3 water rate impact minimization strategies for this year. And I'll talk about the first one. The first one is to transfer $39 million of unspent funds for the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project, that's what PREP stands for, to our rate stabilization reserve so that we can draw it down. And that's just a smart way of taking advantage of unspent monies and using it to help minimize rates. And that doesn't change doesn't change the total monies devoted to that project. It simply means that those monies aren't needed today, they're needed in a future year, and we've adjusted our CIP accordingly. And then the second strategy is to leverage available reserves and draw them down during this time over the next couple of years. And we've forecasted to draw down reserves by $64 million over the next 2 years to help minimize the rate impact that you're going to see in a moment. And then step 3 or strategy 3 is a one-time transfer of $25 million from our watershed and stream stewardship fund to the water utility in FY23. And we believe that we can accommodate that transfer without a harmful impact to the flood protection program, which is where those monies would have been spent. And so this next slide talks about some of the baseline assumptions that this preliminary projection pays for. Many of them I've already spoken about. I'll just highlight one bullet on this slide, and that's the third bullet. That's the Delta Conveyance Project that we are participating in. And that's the Governor's Tunnel project that would solve the Bay Delta issues and keep imported water flowing into the county. And roughly 40% of the water used in this county comes from the Bay Delta. So it's a very important project, just like the other projects that we've spoken of. And so this next slide shows the preliminary groundwater charge increase scenarios. And the scenario that I want to focus on is the one at the very top, the top line. It says baseline scenario 1. And so we're projecting a 15% increase in FY23, same in 24, same in 25. And again, driven by the drought, those emergency water purchases, the water usage reduction that impacts revenues. There's just no, pretty way to say that, but that's what happens to water utilities. And then in the longer term, you see 9.1% over the next 4 years. Beyond that, largely driven by the capital improvement program and this era of investment that we're in, and then tapering off in the latter years. And then the scenarios below that, I mentioned that we ran some scenarios with lower water usage, lower rebounds, and essentially the projections get a little bit higher under those scenarios as the water usage projections decrease. And so this next slide shows basically the same thing, only we've interpreted those rate percentage increases into the monthly impact to the average household. So again, focusing on that top line there and the FY23 column, that a 15% increase in the water charge would translate to $7.75 per month to the average household. And that does not include any increase that a retailer would layer on top. And so kind of rounding out this presentation with some other charges and things, this particular table, I wanted to point out a couple of things. And that is first, the first 2 lines on this table, that's the contract treated water surcharge and the non-contract treated water surcharge that the city pays for treated water from Valley Water. And those particular surcharges are projected to be no change over the next 2 years. And then at the very bottom, I mentioned that we're utilizing reserves, and this kind of gives you some detail about the particular reserves that we're drawing down. We've called it our supplemental water reserve, our drought reserve, our rate stabilization reserve, drawing them down to almost zero by FY24. And then the operating and capital reserve at the very bottom line, that's our reserve that's meant for the unknowns of the future. And we're keeping that at a healthy level over the next couple of years. And so here's our schedule for the rate setting process. And we're already in the February timeframe. Our next key milestone is February 25th. That's when we'll finalize what we call our report on protection and augmentation of water supplies, or PAWS for short. And that's the report that talks about all the activities that we're going to be undertaking to preserve the groundwater basin and ensure water supply, and the staff recommended rates for the next year, and all the analytical support that goes behind that. And then I'll point out the public hearings that will be occurring in the April timeframe, and then the board is scheduled to adopt budget and water charges on May 10th. And then just to finalize here, here's the summary. So the key drivers for the water rate increases that you just looked at, the drought, the emergency water purchases to ensure water supply for Silicon Valley, and continue addressing the drought, the smart infrastructure investments that are needed today. As we know that investing today is smart, and that inflation is a real problem, and delaying those projects just mean they get more and more expensive. And we're leveraging all available tools to minimize the rate impacts, and we'll continue to reassess this. If the drought improves dramatically in the near term, then the rate impacts that you just saw may get better. And obviously, if the drought goes the other direction, if it extends and gets worse, then you could see the rate impacts get worse as well. And I think I'll pause there for any questions or comments. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Gilmore.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Yeah, it's not good news. Nobody wants any rate increases, especially at those rates. But I had a question. You had one slide that said 15% was the equivalent of about $7.75 approximately for an average residential user a month. But then you said that that does not include what a retailer will layer on top of that. Could you explain that a little bit further in terms of what the retailer may do, and does Valley Water have any control over those contracts?
Sure, yeah, thank you for the question. So Valley Water is the primary wholesale provider. And so the $7.75 that I showed you was the impact of the wholesale rate increase. And so we have several retailers that pump water from the wells and pay us a groundwater charge fee, or take our treated water. And so they have their own cost increases and their own CIP that they pay for. So each individual retailer may raise rates a little bit further depending on their own needs and their own infrastructure. And our board does not have any control over what retailers do.
Do we have any idea, just a follow-up question, is there any idea of what that might mean for our residents in terms of 15% isn't really 15%, it's actually more, but do you have any idea of what that might be?
Yeah, I can answer in general that for most retailers, the wholesale part of their cost structure is anywhere from 40 to 60%. So you can kind of do the math there that a 15% increase would probably translate to 7% for a retailer, and then they would layer on their portion of an increase on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilperson Hardy.
Thank you. You went through the Anderson Dam, the purified water, and the piping. You talked about the levee Shoreline. I understand the Rinconada water treatment plant is quite old, but I didn't hear anything about the Pacheco Pass Dam project. My understanding is it would not be online if it started now for another 30 years. And I'm curious how much of the rate increases are baked into that for that project. And you showed projected, but we didn't see what our past increases had been. And that's obviously concerning for our residents, and the realities of what that will do, as the mayor pointed out, that you are the wholesaler, we will get more added onto that. So I was curious what the past increases have been and how we've tried to keep that down. And just looking at that, I don't know if anybody did the math really fast, but that would be, with those percentages, it would be 2.5 times within 10 years, we would have exceeded more than 2.5, or more than doubling our cost to our residents very quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. So a lot of questions there. So starting with Pacheco. So I may need to turn this over to Chris Hakes for further details, but I will say about Pacheco that the cost of that project is baked in. We do have monies, grant monies to the tune of $500 million. We have been successful in achieving a low-cost loan from the EPA through the WIFIA program for that particular project. We've been invited to apply for that low-cost loan, and we are working to try to find partners who would partner with us in that project. So all of that is baked in, and that project would get completed in roughly 10 years and be online in roughly 10 years. So I hope that addresses that part of the question. If there's more details you need, I know that Chris can chime in there. With regard to past increases, I mentioned that back in FY16 and 17, there were close to 19.7 and 19.9% increases those years. In years after that, the increase ranged from 6% to 1 year or a couple of years to 9%. And then 2 years ago, at the onset of the pandemic, the board did not raise rates at all. It was 0. And then last year it was 9.1%. So kind of is all depend. I mean, every year is different. And as I mentioned, you talked about what the projection looks like for the future. We certainly are in an era of investment. Right now, you see large increases over the next few years, and you see those increases taper down. And so I think that's just the ebb and flow of what is happening right now. I hope that helps.
All right, Councilperson Jane.
Yeah, so the city of Santa Clara has sort of a target of maintaining reserves at about 25%, but we've had to dip into those reserves, go below the 25% to fund, loss of revenue from TOT taxes and so on. I know you're dipping into your supplemental water reserve, drought reserve, rate stabilization reserve. What do you have any targets for percentages that you want to hit of your operating budget for those reserves? And I think you said all the reserves are going to 0 by 2024.
Yeah, I mentioned those 3 reserves: the supplemental water, the drought reserve, and the rate stabilization reserve. Those are monies that we put aside in good times to use in the bad times, and certainly now is the time to utilize those reserves. We've in this preliminary analysis, we projected to draw them down close to 0. There's still a little bit in there in a couple of those reserves. In terms of our operating and capital reserve, yes, we do have a target there. We target 15% of our operations outlays. That's roughly 2 months worth of our outlays. And so we do target that to maintain that for the unknowns.
Okay, and then I see the schedule here for the hearings and so on. Is the PUC involved, or is there a state agency that governs rate increases?
Not for Valley Water, no.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any, Councilperson Watanabe?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the hard presentation. I got a couple of things. Number one, thank you for the information regarding the drawdown of the stabilization funds. I don't think there's anybody any city or agency that hasn't had to dip into their reserves and use the rainy day funds. So that's why they're there. I have a question. Aside from that, has Valley Water taken any cost-cutting measures or put in any cost-cutting measures as a result to help? I've got a couple of questions. I don't know if I should throw them all out now or just wait.
However you want to do it, it's up to you.
Okay, I'll go ahead then. The other question regards Pacheco Pass, and again, appreciate, some of that money's, being used upfront now, since it's a ways off. But question, has Valley Water considered a possible bond measure? I know there was talk about a parcel tax earlier, but a bond measure to help with some of the projects and defray, the rate increases. I we hear the rate increases, and I know part of our job as council members or mayors is selling, that to the residents and explaining. Is there anything that Valley Water can do to help us and to take on that, hard discussion, because it is a hard discussion to have, because people have been impacted so much in so many ways over the last 2 years. And let me see. I think that's all I have. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Darren?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for those questions. And with regard to cost cutting, I'll just say a couple of things. And one is that we have gone through the capital program, many eyes, whether it be staff, board committee, water retailers, and it's really hard to find a project that we don't need in our capital program. And again, with inflation, it's also hard to postpone projects. And so the other kind of thing that I'll mention with regard to cost cutting is that several years ago, we did draw down through an attrition program staffing levels. And we have then been in a process of increasing staffing levels. And again, largely because we're in this era of investment, we've got many projects that need to get done. And so that's one of the, I think the main cost sort of cutting or saving measure is really watching the staffing levels. I mean, you talk to any manager around here and they'll say, I need more staff to get the work done. And so it is something that senior management looks at very closely. The other question was with regard to bond measure, and we do look at that. We've had those suggestions many times. I will say that we did some polling last fall to kind of look at that. We didn't see that anything could pass that would help us in this respect, but we are looking at that. We do poll every now and then to see if there is something that could be done from a bond measure or tax measure that would help pay for large capital projects that really benefit the entire county. So we do look at that. We just didn't see that was possible when we did this recent polling.
No, thank you for that. And I know we're in the process of looking at measures as well. And I guess it all depends on the year and the economy. But to your point about the capital projects and where cost cutting can be, that's one of the things that we deal with because of our budgets, and we have had to cut a lot of programs and projects and staffing as a result of just cost cutting measures and just having to put money elsewhere. So I know we are all impacted. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Darren, for the report. Quick comments, like I was looking at the preliminary cost projections, like they're pretty steep, like from 21 to 22, basically increase of 44%, which is very high, taking into account where we are right now. And from 22 to 23, from 536 million to 667, again, around 24% of increase of that. So these are pretty steep increases in a way, and I know you are making use of the reserve funding so that you don't pass on all of that to the consumers, basically, and making it much more shallow, like not passing on all that hike. That's good for us. So my question is, one is, do we have a data like how much of the water average resident is using inside the house versus outside the house? Outside the house, I mean to lawns and ground, whatever they are doing outside the house. And I'm not sure what that data is. And should we make a target to reduce that outside uses? I know inside uses cannot be decreased to that extent, but outside use can really be drastically cut if we make a policy decision and we infiltrate that to every municipality under your jurisdiction. And as a long term, whether it's drought or non-drought, if that we know that percentage. So that can be one long-term solution to reduce our overall water conservation, as conserving the water, as well as putting less load on the consumers who are using the water. And my second question would be to my city staff, which can be answered later on. I know they might not have answer to that. Like we use 3 types of different water, HHE, our own groundwater, and the valley water, basically. So how much are the increases from all these 3 different agencies? Is it the same amount of increase what we are seeing from valley water, or is it a lesser increase from other 2 type of water we are using? So those are my comments. And I would like to see if you have answers to those questions, like indoor uses of an average family versus outdoor usage. And what can, as a policy decision, if anybody can throw a comments on that going down in future, what we can do on that. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer that, council member. So the average home uses about half of their water outside and half inside. We do see that going down as maybe cities, redevelop and things become denser, or they have to meet new state requirements. But yes, that is why we focus our many water saving programs on outdoor landscaping to convert it from lawns to other other plants that use less water. Yeah, we encourage everyone to go to watersavings.org.
Along those same lines, Kirsten, maybe Rachel could talk briefly about, we do work very, very closely with, hopefully with all the cities, including your city, and we appreciate what your city has already put in. We're not necessarily a land use planning agency, but we are. Rachel could talk a little bit about some of the things that we're pushing forward with Mowindo and some of the other things on green building and other things like that. Rachel?
Thank you, Chief Baker. Yes, just very briefly, I know we're getting a lateness in the hour here. We do have the model water efficient new development ordinance that I understand our government relations staff here at Valley Water have talked with the City of Santa Clara staff already about. And I understand the City of Santa Clara has already, has been mentioned several times before tonight, you already have embraced a lot of these practices. We really are very grateful to the City of Santa Clara for that. I think you're a front runner among a lot of our cities. We also have, it's an online e-shopping cart where any resident, including residents of City of Santa Clara, can sign up to receive free of charge and free delivery a number of different water conservation devices, ranging from shower heads to aerators that you use commonly in your kitchen or your sink faucets. So I'd really very much encourage you to look into that as well. I know our communications team works very closely with your water conservation folks already. So hopefully we're doing the best we can to get the word out to the folks in Santa Clara.
Thank you.
I can answer the question, Councilmember Shahal, on the city's rates. We actually are going through the annual process right now, as you know, as part of the budget process. We present to council each year the proposed rates and to share what the level of increase, much like what was presented today for our different utilities. And so internally, we are doing the rate work in March, beginning on March 1st. We're having our kickoff meeting internally to just go over it as staff has work together. And so you will be seeing that very shortly.
Thank you. And I will summarize on what I learned. Like 50% outside usage of water is, to me, it seems to be pretty high. And I think we should be very aggressive in our ordinances going forward, how we can reduce that 50%. Just like our rate is increasing by 15% every year, we should be reducing that by 15% every year. So I would say any recommendation from Valley Water and our city water conservation experts, anything we can do, I'll be more than happy to champion that and support that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more public, board, or council comments? All right.
Public comments at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, I'd love Mayor Gilmore, since any closing remarks you'd like to make on this uplifting meeting, anything that jumps out?
Yes, I love to end on higher rates for everyone. Yes, that's always a great way to end a meeting, isn't it? I really want to thank you and your board and your staff for really enlightening us, our council and our community, on what the, I'm just going to call them extreme challenges we are all facing going forward. But I think, many people have said it today, is that we have to work on this together. We're all in this together, and it's going to take all of us to help solve, a lot of these issues. I just think, we need to lobby Washington and California and everywhere we can to get the money that we need to fix all of this infrastructure here. I mean, and that is the key for us. And whatever we can do to help, we will do to help you, because it helps us and it helps our community. So I think that, we're in for a tough road, and all I can say is, I'm going to do a rain dance. We're going to pray for rain, but that's not going to fix our levees and our, everything else, but at least it'll solve one of the problems. So, but thank you very much. I think you have really educated us on what we need to do. And it's not going to be easy with this rate adjustment at all. Don't get me wrong. We're still going to have a lot of challenges with our residents, and the more information you can give us to help us to explain what's happening with Valley Water and all of your retailers and everything else, we have a lot of explaining to do to our community and why this is happening. But I appreciate the collaboration and the education this evening. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, and thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members and your staff and our board, our Vice Chair and the board. And we look forward to working together collaboratively on some of these really tough issues. This is tough to handle. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mayor, to adjourn.
Okay, we have to do it officially. I don't know about you, but may I have a motion to adjourn from City Council?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Assistant City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Watanabe?
Yes, and thank you everyone for your time this evening.
Councilmember Shahal?
Yes.
Councilmember Hardy?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Jane?
Yes.
Councilmember Becker?
Yes.
Mayor Gilmore?
Yes. That passes unanimously for us. Board Chair Kremen, I don't know if you have to do the same thing. So
no, we're just gonna adjourn to go drink after this meeting. So
okay, well, I have the gavel. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Direct potable reuse.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Conserve.